This is the websites.ca podcast, where we help Canadian small businesses build and maintain an effective website and online presence.
Hey everybody, this is Sean Corbett with websites.ca marketing.
And Ryan Demaray with websites.ca sales.
Today we have sort of an interesting topic. We're going to brainstorm some stuff for you about looking at your website, especially in this new year, 2021, and moving forward, thinking about it with a more streamlined approach. And what we mean by that is getting rid of all the bells and whistles, focusing in on what you really want to accomplish with the site, but also just from a very simple technical point of view too. There's like Ryan and I see a lot of websites with a lot of extra junk on them, and they physically slow down the site. They physically repel the ideal customer that you want to attract. A lot of extra bells and whistles have this problem of detracting from your proper message. And yet people, when they're building the website, they get so excited, right, to add these things. And you've seen that before, Ryan. Mm-hmm. Or just over time, sometimes you think of an idea 6 months later and you call your website guy and you say, yeah, okay, we should add that to the site. And you do that iteration 20, 30 times. You look back at the site 3 years later, all of a sudden it's got all this junk on it. Some of it's not even relevant anymore.
Yeah.
So when Ryan and I were talking beforehand, I think what you were focusing on when you're helping people build websites is you want to get down to like the bare bones, at least at the start. Why are they doing it? Isn't that right?
Exactly. So a task I always like to get our clients and all of our listeners out there that have their own sites, whenever you're really doing anything on your website, whether you're doing an update or want to put in new photos or add a promotion or a special, I always like to get my clients to zoom out of the little thing they're trying to change, zoom out and look at the big picture of the website and what the overall goal of your website is for your website visitors. So a quick example, I have a client that has a retail clothing store in Vancouver, BC, and his main business, he doesn't do any sales online, doesn't want to sell online. He needs to get people in his store, people to open the door and walk into the store. So a thought and a goal that we set with him with making changes on his website is, okay, how does this support the goal of getting people to walk in your door? And so we did do some updates and streamlined the website and added some call to action buttons that really led people towards that goal that he wanted people to get to. That's the finish line, as people are coming into his store and being physically there to purchase his products. Now, obviously, it's pandemic time; things are a little different in that front, but still, that's his goal. He books appointments and whatnot to do his in-person shopping. But how this relates to streamlining is a lot of times business owners and website updaters will get kind of lost in the minutia of the little features, or I'd like to see this share button added here, this added there. When I often like to get our clients and our listeners to zoom out and think about the big picture of what you want people to do, whether that's step foot in your store, whether it is to purchase something online, or sometimes it's to fill out a qualifying form on the website. And all your updates or your changes or your really everything on your website should be leading people to that goal. So that's one element of streamlining websites that I think is important to touch on.
Yeah, and that's sort of the bird's eye view of it, right? Like you said, the overall goal and strategy. And then I definitely wanted to just talk about the nuts and bolts of it, of like, why would we even propose to somebody to streamline their website? Like, why not just add 20 pages? Maybe one of those pages will attract somebody. Why not have extra pictures? Why not have this and this, these functionalities? And there's definitely some validity to that argument. Like, there are some cases where you want to cover all your bases. And I think you and I have talked about that a lot before, right? When we're talking about, like, do you want a form or a chat box and all this kind of stuff we've been talking about recently. So we're not against having options, but one of the main reasons why I wanted to talk about streamlining websites is because as more and more people use their mobile phone to browse the internet, to make purchases, to find information. Um, there's this sort of idea in the website design world that, oh, we have to have a perfect website for a desktop experience and a perfect website for a tablet and a perfect website for a mobile phone. And while we have that covered at websites.ca, we can certainly do that. I think that it's pulling a small business in too many directions. I think the simplest way to look at websites is just to picture it like it's a mobile phone website only. That's it. And imagine it from that point of view of somebody using it on a mobile phone. And if it blows up a bit bigger on a desktop, a nicely designed mobile first website is going to work great on the desktop as well. So the biggest implication for that, just a couple easy ones that I would wanted to talk about, is like these things like social share buttons. Unnecessary, get rid of them. Like for 99% of the people listening to this right now, you don't need the stupid social share buttons. They're just distracting. They're there for no reason. They slow down the page. No one's sharing the damn articles anyway. Of course, if you have a strategy that's very complex and it's working for you, don't change it because I said so. But right, but like everybody I've ever seen had a social share button. You ask them, "Oh, did you get any shares in the last year?" Nope. So
Right.
just it's just distracting, wasted space on your site. I would just start thinking about Streamline in terms of keeping people on your website, making it fast to load, easy to read, easy to scroll through and find what you need. So another no-brainer, I think, is video backgrounds, especially autoplay videos. Right, like if you have to embed a YouTube video for an explanation, okay, I think that should be considered. But people with these fancy video backgrounds because they saw it on a fashion website or on a Coca-Cola website or something. I mean, again, stupidity, distracting, slows the site down, and that ties into another topic that actually is a bit contentious, and Ryan and I don't necessarily agree on, and that's that I am very bearish on the image slider. Lately, more and more, when I advise clients, I tell them to ditch a slider and just go for a one single image, and I find them fairly unnecessary. But I think you had definitely at least some pushback to that. Hey, Ryan?
Yeah, and we chatted a bit uh, before this podcast about that topic, Sean. And yeah, I see your perspective, and I don't fully disagree with you, but I do disagree for some applications where a slider can work. Um, in a positive way. There's certain applications. There's a lot of our websites that we manage utilize a slider, and there's certain applications where it just works really, really well at promoting a message. Especially I really am a fan of the 3-slide slider. The old design adage of designing in threes,
Yeah,
or the
for
feng
sure.
feng shui of designing in threes. But at the same time, I do agree that there is overkill with sliders. Perfect example is when we have built some sliders that over time have built up and built up, and now there's 20 slides inside the slider. That if you were to sit and watch the slider auto play, through those 20 slides, you're going to sit there for like 5 minutes before you're done looking at all the 20 slides. So that I agree is just a bad idea. No one's going to sit there and watch it slide through 20 slides or click through those 20 slides. The whole idea of a slider, in my opinion, is to give people a quick kind of like 3-shot impression of your business. If you have 3 main services that you offer, I'll use a landscaping company as an example. If you do lawn maintenance, if you cut the grass, you do hardscaping, which is actually doing, laying patio bricks and stuff like that. And you do snow removal in the winter. And those are your 3 things that you do. And those are the 3 things you want everybody to know that you do that. A slider is one way of showcasing those 3 things really simply, nice. And you can have nice graphics to support them, right? You can have the bobcat with the snow, and you can have a, fella walking behind the lawnmower, cutting the grass, and a beautiful hardscaped garden in a slider format. That's a great example of one that I think falls into this streamlining website topic that we're talking about here. But definitely they can get overkill when you get into having 5, 10 or more slides where it's just overbearing and no one's going to sit through that.
I think it's a perfect example of your first point about goals, right? Is that the fellow who ends up with 20 slides in his slider, if he kind of took a step back and asked what the goal was, And he said, no, it's essential that I have, website visitors have to be able to see all 20 of those pictures. Well, then from our point of view, we can help them go, okay, well, then I think you need a gallery, not a slider, right?
That's right.
And the gallery occupies different real estate on the website. It has different
Mhm.
expectations. So yeah, again, when we're saying streamline, we're not necessarily saying like, oh, it has to be a one-page website with one picture and one paragraph and all that. We're saying what's the point? And
Mhm.
what's the most effective way to do that point? That's how you streamline a website. You don't tear it to shreds and then there's nothing left.
Right. And just to add on to one other thought that I had here, Sean, you mentioned earlier about, adding over time, you add content, you add pages, you add slides to your slider. And that's what happens to a website over the course of years. We've been around since 1999. We've hosted some websites that long, and just over the course of years and updates and business evolutions, layers can get stacked upon one another and get, you know, build on and upward on the
Yeah.
website. And sometimes there's no cohesiveness to, from layer 3 to layer 7. And that's where, our website review can really tie into this streamlining of the website, where once a year we like to schedule a call with our clients, and just in a quick 30-minute call, we can really go through, most of the website with a fine-tooth comb and figure out, hey, like, here's what we suggest you do here. Everything's looking good on this front, but how are things working over here? We notice you haven't added any gallery pictures, or we've noticed, hey, you've got 10 layers of stuff here that we could probably streamline down and get a more effective website out of it by paring down some of the content that's been built up over the years.
Yeah, and often we find that it's just about, as silly as it sounds, giving people permission to say, that stuff doesn't have to be on your website. So it's almost like a relief for them. Like, oh, okay, yeah, cool, you're right, I can take it down. And
Yeah.
yeah, you're exactly right, Ryan. The streamlining is not really like a one-off thing you do. It's for the concept of this podcast. Sure, hopefully, if someone's never thought of it before, they can sit down and ponder on it. But it would definitely be helpful to take that approach where at least once a year you look at your website and cut out the fat and redirect attention. Another thing that we wanted to mention, because we hear this a lot from people, is this issue with scrolling. So what I was saying earlier on in the podcast is when you could think of a website as just a mobile version, no matter where you're looking at it. And a big thing for me is when I'm looking for information and I'm trying to kind of navigate a website, I want it to be as few clicks as possible and easy to scroll and read through. And notice how I said scroll there, just like on a mobile phone, when you're using your phone to access apps or websites, you're constantly scrolling. And, and I think we all remember when the first iPhone came out, how cool it was to use your fingers to scroll on the screen. And like, it was kind of
Totally.
a trip, right? So we have this built-in almost dopamine drip to do that. Now, everybody accepts that when it comes to using their mobile phone to browse the internet. However, and I'm sure you can back me up on this, Ryan, we have heard hundreds of times, oh, I have an update for my website, but where do you want us to put it? Well, it's got to go near the top. Okay, sure. The next update, well, where's it go? It's got to go near the top. Next update, and all of a sudden, everything. Well, you can't have everything near the top. And they say, well, but no one will scroll down. I'm scared if someone, if we put it in the middle of the page or the bottom of the page, no one will see it. And that idea comes from, so I'm a copywriting and marketing guy. That idea comes from physical print stuff. And there was a fold, and you had stuff above the fold and below the fold. And it's absolutely true. I don't want to gaslight anybody. It's absolutely true that, usually the headline gets read first, and that's the thing on the top of the fold. And you want to be cognizant of that. But in this day and age, it's not just that there's multiple screen sizes. So it's very hard in most cases to say exactly where the scroll line is going to be. It's possible, but it's harder. But it's just not true. People are used to scrolling on your website. So of course, put the most important thing, one or two things with the streamline approach that you focus on for your goal at the top. But it's totally okay to have a page that scrolls a bit more. In fact, and I'd like to get your opinion on this, Ryan. I would be more likely to say have less pages on your website and make the pages longer, and take like content that's related and stack it into one page in cleanly organized sections, because even Google has now changed over time, and they don't reward you as much for having separate information on separate pages. They're very good at giving you reasonable SEO results, when you have sort of alike content, contextually related content. So that can go on a longer page as long as it's cleanly designed and fast to load, and you can scroll through it and read and find what you want with a little bit of white space, right?
Right. Exactly right. And this is something that I'm sure we're all seeing out there as we look at websites, browsing the web in our day to day, that these longer scrolling one page website design styles are becoming more popular. And I'm a fan of them for the most part. Now, they're to me, counterpointing to you a bit, Sean. To me, there is that a diminishing point of returns with it, where if you've got a lot of stuff to say, sometimes that if you're trying to fit that all onto that one page design with, in the industry we call them anchor links, where you can have a menu at the top, but when you click on the button, it actually just loads you down to that portion of the page where that content is. You're still on that
Yeah,
same.
it's not sending you to a different page. Exactly.
Right. It's not sending you to a different page. It appears, sometimes it appears like it does, but and if a site's designed really well, it can feel that way, but it's actually still nested in that same page. And but I am a fan, Sean, of the idea of condensing the number of pages that you have. That, because it is definitely an older design idea that every new idea or every new product or service that you want to promote requires its own page.
Yeah.
And that's not true in 2021. Sean's right. Like, Google's evolving as a search engine. You can cover a few different topics on one page if the page is properly designed. But that being said, I also don't subscribe that every website should be just a one long scrolling page, because sometimes there is benefit to having a separated page that has its own unique title bar and description from a search engine element. It really depends. One thing that I really love about working in this industry and working with small business owners across Canada is that every project is different. Even if I'm working with, I use the example of a landscaping company. If I'm working with a landscaping company in, rural Alberta versus a landscaping company that's located in downtown Toronto, or the GTA, even though they may offer the exact same services, the way that the website is approached can be drastically different. And that's one thing that's really nice about these podcasts that Sean and I do, is we're trying to provide some general advice and coaching and what we're seeing, on the front lines working in this industry. But that never means like that this is the one answer to follow, right? The one thing that I've learned about this whole internet industry is, you got to look at all types of data, all types of opinions, and formulate your own of what works best for you and your business. And that's the way I try and help our customers. I don't try and go into every single project with just the same rules and regulations and just apply that. You have to mold them a bit to fit with your business, your industry, and the area that you're working in.
Totally. Yep. Exactly. You kind of start wide with a principle or a strategy, and then as you
fine
start,
tune.
yeah, yeah, and make it, make specific tactics or specific, content or whatever exactly for that business and that personality type. So yeah, I think we're totally on the same page there. Yeah, for sure. I wouldn't want to see hundreds of websites that are just one page scrollers. But what people want to keep in mind, just overall, we've given you a couple ideas, and like Ryan said, these aren't commandments. You have to get rid of all background videos or whatever. It's a concept to start thinking of. Well, do I really need it? Do I want to slow people down? Like, how can I move them from point A to point B in the most efficient time? And that's not just for you, like it's for the user of the website will appreciate that as well. So that's where we're coming from. Try to think of conventions. That's one thing you don't want to do when you're redesigning or building a brand new website. You don't want to start thinking you have to be different just because, I want to put the logo on the bottom right instead of the top left because everyone does that. Don't do that. You're going to be playing with a convention that's going to mess people up. So the good news is, for those people who are worried about scrolling is like the biggest convention on the internet right now because of all social media. Everything on social media is just one stream scroll that you scroll down and scroll down and scroll down. So yeah, don't worry about scrolling, but don't try to reinvent the wheel with fancy stuff. Don't add too much stuff. And a good website provider, like we strive to be,
Mhm.
will guide you in that. And then once you get past that point, now you can start being creative with your content or the messaging you want to put out. Or like Ryan said, what's your ultimate goal? What's the call to action? What do you want them to do at the end of it? That's
Mhm.
kind of where you want to be different and stand out, not not on the top design level side of the website, and certainly not overdoing it.
Just some closing thoughts here for the topic of streamlining your website. An adage that I always like to bring up, and I'm sure any of our clients that are listening have maybe heard me say this before, but I am a big fan of less is more when it comes to web design and the content on your website. Keeping things really tight and concise and simple, and less is more is a philosophy that I really subscribe to. And focusing on that goal of what do we want people to do, and how is this change, or how are these pictures, or how is this revision going to help get those people to reach that goal? Those are two streamline elements that I'll leave our listeners with.
Yeah, probably if somebody just asked themselves that question and then they, really were honest with themselves and vetted it,
Mhm.
they would never have a website that would really necessarily need to be streamlined too much, because they probably do 50% less updates
Right,
because they'd realize I don't really need to do this. I'm just doing it to do it.
right.
If you're not satisfied with your current website or the service you get from your provider, you can switch to websites.ca for free and get a great support team behind you. Just visit business.websites.ca. That's BUSINESS.websites.ca, or email Ryan directly at RYAN@websites.ca.
Thanks for listening, guys. Catch you next time.